I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's analysis of the news. In 1979, November it was, under Jimmy Carter's last year, he was running for re-election. Interest rates went to 22%. Why did we have such a catastrophe? Remember, please, it happened in an election year, and it cost him his job. Ronald Reagan was voted in as president instead. So Jimmy Carter became a one-term president. Now, it's possible that it had something to do with our hostages in Iran, because Jimmy Carter just wrung his hands, didn't know what to do. He was afraid to do anything. And so interest rates went to 22%. Do you remember the oil bust 4 years later? And the S&Ls, the savings and loans, going under during the mid-'80s was during an election year. Ronald Reagan, however, was able to stave off the problem. And then do you remember in 1988, George H.W. Bush ran for president and won because he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes." You understand how the American public vote their pocketbooks? Then do you remember 4 years later, after he had raised taxes, Bill Clinton's campaign motto was, "It's the economy, stupid." But do you remember in the last year of Clinton's administration, the internet bubble burst and the Republicans took over the White House? I mean, it was close. It took the Supreme Court to make the decision, but the point is the economy is manipulated. Somewhere, maybe by the Bank of England, maybe on Wall Street, maybe the Bilderbergers or the Council on Foreign Relations, somebody is manipulating our economy when they want a regime change. And so this year, it happens to be the housing bubble. But now wait a minute. We don't hear anything about credit cards. If you'll think for a moment, credit cards pose a greater threat than mortgages. Well, I realize we've got some mortgages defaulting, but surely that's just a drop in the bucket to the real problems that face our economy. The credit card. A lot of families have more than one credit card, and they've got them maxed out. And in the last few years, you remember if a person is just 1 day late with their payment, their interest rates go to 32%. Now, how can Americans continue to live with that sort of crookedness? And then there's not only credit card fraud, people losing their identity, other people stealing their credit cards or credit card numbers and buying a lot of stuff on it. Well, the banks are absorbing those problems, and it's kept under the rug. It's not being talked about in the press. Why? Because the international banking cartel wants Americans and the world to get used to using the plastic card instead of hard currency. They want to go to a cashless society because one of these days they're going to get rid of the card, but in favor of a mark in the right hand of the forehead. That's when we come to the words of the prophets. And we know that James says that one of these days the rich men will weep and howl. Their riches will be corrupted, their garments moth-eaten, so to speak. Their gold, silver is cankered, the rust of them is a witness against them. James says, you've heaped treasure together for the last days. Now we know these are the last days James is talking about. He says, you've lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton. Nourish your hearts in a day of slaughter. You've condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. But listen to verses 7 and 8 and 9. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. There it is. So you can see when the tribulation period begins and the economy begins to falter again. And by the way, here we are in 2008 with the economy faltering. my opinion is, after the election, whoever gets in to the White House is going to suddenly, the economy is going to be okay again. And everything will look good. I'm not saying that the problems will be solved overnight, but they'll be well under control, and the stock market will go back up, and the people on Wall Street begin to make a lot of money again off of us suckers. Well, when is the next downturn going to be? It's got to be 4 years down the line. That's an election year, 2012. But if you recall, 2012 just happens to be in the middle of a 7-year cycle. Now, I'm not telling you this 7-year cycle is going to be the tribulation period, but one of these days, during a 7-year cycle, right in the middle of it, the mark of the beast is going to be instituted. And at that point, these rich men won't have any money. These wealthy it'll all be stolen from them by the international banking cartel, the Antichrist and his cronies. They're going to take over the world and establish a mark in the right end of the forehead before men can buy or sell. So James says, be patient, brethren. He's talking to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. That's what he says in verse 1. So this is not the church he's talking to. He's talking to the Jews of the tribulation period. He says, be patient unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth. The husbandman, of course, is the Messiah, the Lord Jesus Christ, who's coming back, as described in Revelation chapter 19. It says, and hath long patience for it, until he received the early and the latter rain. We received the early rain on Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, and chapters 1 and 2, and then we received the latter rain at the second coming. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Now, I think James is a part of 7 books that describe the tribulation period, James being the first of the 7 small books between Hebrews and Revelation, describes the first year of the tribulation. So here at the onset of the tribulation, he says, be patient, the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. And the judge is standing before the door. So judgment is about to fall upon the earth, and it starts with the rich men losing their riches. Who knows? That may be starting this year. I don't know. I don't mean to set a date. But it is important for you to understand that the economy usually falters in an election year. And after the election, everything gets back to normal again. So, my word to you would be patient. I'm J.R. Church. Tune in again tomorrow for our analysis on the news.